Hello all, welcome to the next episode of Education Podcast. Today we have a very special guest, the Dean of Admissions for the Aga Khan Academy. And since there is so much which he has to share and which he has on his resume, I would let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Mr. Tembe. Fantastic opportunity to come and speak with you. And thank you for inviting us back to Meghalaya. I'm currently the Dean of Admissions at the Aga Khan Academy, Hyderabad. But prior to this, I've worked at the Woodstock School in Missouri. And prior to that, at the O.P. Jindal Global University, where we sort of set up the law school, the liberal arts program, and so on. And prior to that, actually, I was an investment banker. So I spent about 5 years living in London and working for Merrill Lynch. So the transformation to education happened after I moved back from London. Spent a year living in villages and small towns across India, where I was working with ITC's eChopal. So that's a short summary of my work experience.
Wow, that's amazing, very impressive. So now, what is Aga Khan Academy basically? So now this is for the, all our viewers are mostly from Meghalaya.
Sure.
So since we have done just one iteration,
yes.
So I'm sure many are not aware. So with that in mind, what is Aga Khan Academy?
So the Aga Khan Academies are a group of institutions that have been set up by His Highness the Aga Khan. As many people might know, he's one of the world's most renowned people, but also very well known with philanthropy. So we actually operate over 200 schools around the world, many of which cater to lower middle income groups. And we're all over Central Asia, Africa, and many other locations. But in India, the Aga Khan Academy Hyderabad was established in 2010 and has been in existence since then. The land was, of course, gifted to us by the government of Andhra Pradesh in the early 2000s. When it comes to philanthropy, we're one of the very few schools in the world that believes in a very strong approach towards pluralism, diversity, and inclusivity, which is what brought us to Meghalaya. So over 50% of students at the school receive some kind of financial support to attend the Aga Khan Academy. So it's an IB school, which is unlike any other IB school in terms of approach for recruitment of students.
One thing what viewers and parents will want to know is that the IB,
yes.
right? And how is it different from the other boards which are there in India? And is it like a, will they get a equivalency certificate?
Yeah.
Will they be accepted in colleges after?
Great question. In fact, today I had a parent who asked me the same question because, as you know, we're conducting these assessments to identify students to join us in Hyderabad. The International Baccalaureate program offers 3 streams. One is in the elementary, where you do the primary years program, which we call the PYP. Then the middle years program, MYP, which is 6 to 10. And the diploma program, which is grade 11 and 12. So the Aga Khan Academy Hyderabad is one of the very few schools which is an IB continuum school. Right from grade 1 to grade 12, we only offer the IB. The question you ask about the difference between the boards. I went to an ICSE school, so I grew up in Calcutta. I went to La Martiniere, and we read ICSE. We graduated with our ISC in class 12. I find the IB to be far more challenging, and I'm speaking on a very personal level here. Having understood the curriculum, why it benefits young people, is the times we're living in. I think younger people need to be asked more questions about what they think of a matter. It's important to understand their opinion. I think the IB really allows a sense of clarity for younger people to understand curriculum far better. And there is no rote learning. So there is no textbook-driven approach. The kind of classroom engagement that students experience in the IB curriculum has heavy engagement, lots of written assessments, there's a lot of research. You're almost getting college ready, which I don't think I was when I studied in class 12. I have a lot of respect for ICSE and CBSE. But at the same time, when I'm engaging and interacting with a lot of the IB students, they have a lot to offer. And coming to the question about university selection. So because we cater to a variety of socio-economic groups within our school, we have to be very mindful of where these students can go on. There is a myth, of course, that if you study the International Baccalaureate, you can only go abroad, which isn't true. I have seen a lot of outstanding young graduates from IB schools who've gone on to very good Indian universities and have done really well. So that decision of where you want to study is purely down to the child, the family, the grades that the child gets at school, but the opportunities are quite literally, it's the ocean in front of you.
So the Indian universities, they accept this
Very much so.
certificates,
Yes.
or they have to go for some
No,
equivalency certificates?
not at all. They are very well accepted and respected. And I think the IB's entry to India has grown. In the last few years, the number of IB schools that are coming up is a significant number. And it's not just the metros. You look at a city like Jaipur, for instance, the number of IB schools that have come up there. Hyderabad, tons of IB schools. So this is keeping in mind that there is a sort of a tactical strategic shift where many schools for significant period of time have had a CBSE board or ICSE board, but they feel now is the time to introduce the IB. So some schools were starting completely fresh, brand new schools, they're starting with the IB. So this is an interesting time in the landscape of education in India, where IB, I feel, requires a little more thinking is how do you cater to the masses, is how do you cater to people who can't afford the IB education. So that's where we come in some way.
Okay, so you have studied in ICSE.
Yes, I have.
Right, so now you know both the worlds. So just to simplify, what are the 3 USPs of IB over ICSE or /CBSE?
That's a good question. I think one of the things is when I went to the University of St. Andrews, I felt I was very ill prepared attending some of the early classes. I was very used to thinking about the text I have read, almost paraphrasing what I have read into a paper. I think one of the advantages that I see among students studying the IB is you're allowing them to form an opinion. And that's a very important thing. I don't recall a lot of people asking me, what do you think, Arjun? We've just discussed this formula. What's your opinion on it? Here's the formula, do the sum, right? It was pretty much standardized, right? I think one of the advantages is the gray cell. You're really using your brain, 1. 2, I think you write better. I think the amount of research that goes into the formatives and the summatives that these children submit, it's quite incredible. Even grades 6, 7, 8, if you meet these students, I'm blown away with the kind of conversation that they bring to the table. So I think you are thinking clearly, you're writing better. And I think the last is an interesting one. You can't cram and study for an IB exam. It's something for me that's important to understand, that you can't wake up last minute and say, my exam's tomorrow, I'll finish the syllabus tonight. There is a sense of diligence, determination, hard work, and that continuity that adds to these 3 things. I feel you become a better professional when you start working. I've had the privilege of sort of working with people who studied the IB also. It's quite a unique approach. So I'd say these 3 things definitely.
Great. So how did the Meghalaya chapter start?
So, a colleague of ours at the Aga Khan Academy, Amanda, who's been instrumental in working on teacher training, we were one day discussing the Northeast. Because I grew up in Calcutta, I had a lot of friends from the Northeast. When you think of the Northeast in Calcutta, you immediately think about football and rugby and hockey. And these are sports which, in Calcutta, we grew up playing, right? When I moved back to India and I got into, the field of education, I didn't see a strong Northeast presence in a lot of schools, specifically below Madhya Pradesh. So if you look down south, take Bangalore out of the equation. My own personal experience is I don't see a strong representation. So when we started discussing the opportunity of finding a state in India where we could introduce our talent identification program, of which I'll speak a little later, it became very clear that Meghalaya is a state that we need to look at. Of course, the Niti Aayog report also supported the decision. And because we are a network of schools, we often have to involve and get advice from our colleagues and directors who are out of Geneva, out of Paris. And believe you me when I say this, that it didn't take more than 5 minutes for anyone to say, hey, listen, go for it. I had a very short presentation where I said, Meghalaya is a state that has a lot of potential. It's a place where there is great opportunity for young people. And, Dr. Graham Ranger, who's been with the Aga Khan Development Network and the academies for years, Dr. Jonathan Long, who's the head of the Aga Khan Academy, all of them were just so supportive and encouraging. And that really gives you wings, right? I mean, we made an inaugural trip here where we met Shri D.P. Walang, which was, now when I think of it, I think it was February of 2022. And that's when it all kicked off. And we came to the state with very limited knowledge and a lot of firsts. But I'm so glad that we're here because the 4 kids who joined us as the first group of kids, they're doing phenomenal work.
Right. So on that note, the next question is on those 4 students.
Yes.
So take us through the transformation which they have seen.
You've used a very, very good word. And Dr. Long, who is the head of academy at the Aga Khan Academy, Hyderabad, often says the education that we provide at the academy is transformative. You see, I wanted to share something with you that most schools nowadays prime themselves in defining that they're the best or they're the finest. I don't know on what metric, right? If everyone's the best, I don't know how you rank someone, right? But the one thing I've heard consistently from Dr. Long is we are here in the business of transformation. So when these 4 students came, and they don't come really from wealthy families, nor do they come from really urban settings. I mean, when we went to Nongstein and we saw these kids for the first time, I still remember interviewing them on a basketball court in a November morning. And the innocence, the naivety, it just really struck me. And the first thing that struck me was how small they were. And I thought to myself, gosh, I hope they make it, and I hope they don't get homesick. And it's a new environment. None of them had been out of Meghalaya. I think the furthest they went was Guwahati. So today, when I see what they're doing at the academy, I've seen them become inspirations to others. I've seen them become, examples. They came looking for people to support them. Today, they're supporting others. That's transformation. Academically, they're doing well. They're playing football for the school team. They're doing mountain biking. Some of them are breaking records in mountain biking within the school structure. They're taking part in theater. They did improvisational theater about a month ago. So none of this was possible here for them. So when they moved there, they had to come out of their comfort zone. They've come to a place where no one looks like them. So I give a lot of credit to what they've left behind. They deserve all that credit to pick up, move on, come somewhere new and become superheroes. That's transformation. And that's why we're back here, because I know that the next group will only get better.
So I've been in Meghalaya for the last 8 years.
Yes.
And I've been in the field mostly.
Yeah.
And what I've seen is that it's very difficult for you to go out of the state,
Yes.
settle for jobs and all.
Yes.
And in COVID, most of them came back. And even in when you try to send them for some training, I mean, it's very difficult to
Yes.
send them out. So how these 4,
Yes.
they are loving it there.
Yes.
So how did you manage that? Like, what kind of environment is there which makes them not homesick?
That's a great question. And I think it takes a village to raise a child. It's not one person, it's not just us. I think when we initially came here and we identified those 4 students, meeting their families was such a huge eye-opening experience for us. I mean, these are people who had questions like, is an aeroplane safe? Does every seat have a seat
genuine
belt?
question.
Very genuine. How do you get a seat?
Yeah.
Do you wear a seat belt?
Yeah.
Do you take it off? Is there a bathroom? And I remember thinking, we take so much for granted in many ways. And I remember when they first came, we created a small welcoming committee at the airport. And at the time, the principal, Miss Koel Ray, she said, Arjun, I also want to come to the airport to receive them. And I said, Koel, the flight's coming only at 7:30, there's school tomorrow. No, I'm coming. She was there, a group of my interns who are grade 11 students. All of us went to the airport to receive them. two colleagues from Meghalaya, two colleagues came to Meghalaya to collect them so we could put them on the plane, take them on the plane. All of that was done by us. And then we have a very strong counseling team on campus. There's a team that works on student services. There's a dean of students, Mr. Suresh Madhavan. Now we have Mr. Jeff Doffler. All these people, all of them play a part. And one thing I always remember is when we entered the gates of the campus on the first night, it was dark, and the kids had no idea what they were seeing. And the car was going on, and one of them said, "Is this all the school? Are we still in the school?" Mm-hmm. And we said, "Yeah, it's 100 acres." And they had no idea what 100 acres meant at the time. Mm-hmm. And he just said, "As far as I can see, are we here?" And the moment we reached the dorm, the headmaster was there. The head of the academy was waiting. And it's probably the first time that they were engaging with people who weren't Indian. There were so many firsts for them. Getting on a plane, coming to an alien place, away from your own parents, meeting all these people, none of whom look like you, people speaking with accents. But the way these kids embraced it, the dorm parents who they lived with at the time, Mr. Venkat, who was head of the dorm. You see all these people, I'm giving
you call them dorm parents?
Yes.
Not wardens?
No, not wardens. Okay. We're all dorm parents there. Okay. Whoever works in the dorms over there. So I live on campus, but I live in faculty housing. Okay. The dorms have people who are our school teachers who are responsible for these children, and they all are dorm parents. So the way
that's very interesting, because whatever I have seen in hostels and all, it's always warden.
Yes.
So when the word warden, it's kind of different from a parent, right?
Yes.
They cannot get close to them. Maybe.
No. In my head, the warden is all those, those Bollywood films when you see the warden locking up, the people. Yeah. So for us, it's dorm parents, and they really are dorm parents, So the way the dorms are structured is you have 2 apartments on every floor where you have these families staying. So the teachers are with their own families. Oh. So the children are actually engaging with them, not just as people, but as families. And they're responsible for them. So that whole group of teachers who look after grades 6, 7, 8, these 4 students arrived into that dorm. And so they were welcomed by Mr. Venkat, Mr. Suresh, Dr. Long, all these people were there. So when we brought them in, I have to be sure. At the end of the day, I'm making that decision of taking someone to a place where they've probably never been. So if they get homesick, or if they're not studying, or if they feel, I've made a big mistake by coming here, a lot of that is on my watch. So I can do what I do because I'm supported by incredible people who believe.
Great. So I think this has made that environment like a home.
Absolutely.
Great. You have done a lot of assessments now in Meghalaya. Yes. So what is your take on from those assessments? What are your experiences?
Yeah, one of the things for us was when we first came here, for the uninitiated, for people like me who knew Meghalaya, we thought Meghalaya is Shillong. So when we first arrived here, I remember being told, you have to conduct assessments in Tura and Joai and Nongstoin and Nongpoint. And for me, these names were, so I was like, how close? Is it an hour's drive? And they said, no, this is a 10-hour drive. I said, do we really have to go that far? And they said, well, it's a district that we have to cover. So in the spirit of fairness, we said we'll do every district. So I don't know how many thousand kilometers we covered on that trip, but it really gave us a solid understanding of the state. More than that, I think meeting people, there's no better, and you know this, you've done this, there's no better teacher than people. And so when I came the first time, a lot of people were skeptical, but I understood why that was. So, which is why this year we requested you and the team to do an orientation, and boy, has that worked. Last year we did 500. Last time we did 500 assessments, I think. This year we've done 200 plus. And now we're in a place to decide the final 4. But our assessments are also quite unique. A very well-renowned professor, Professor John Monroe, has designed for us how to identify potential. Potential doesn't mean you're going to score 95% in math and English and we're going to take you. He's created a series of problem-solving tasks and something that we call internally dynamic assessments. And you would love this because as an IAS officer, You're trying to ask young people, how do you solve a problem? So we'll take a local problem. We'll say, okay, there are potholes on the road and it's caused an accident. That accident has meant someone in a family has lost someone. What is that problem? If you just say, oh, accident, that's literal. It's in the paper. How do you think out of the box? So yesterday, we spent an entire day with 19 students reviewing problem solving and dynamic assessment.
Great.
And so that gives us so much clarity of how a child thinks. And I must say the biggest surprise this year for us is Jowai. We've got outstanding students who made it till the final round from there.
So what do you think of where is this assessment going? I mean, we have been talking of summative, formative,
Yes.
What is the future? AI coming in,
Yeah.
all kind of apps, ed tech. So what is the future?
ChatGPT, which is now a tricky thing for us.
Right.
because you
So
don't
what
know
is the
who's using
future, as per you, because you're into assessments, where are we going on this?
During the pandemic, we did something interesting because we couldn't stop enrollment because we had started conducting online classes. But you can't conduct an admission test online at that point in time because no one, when COVID happened, we all had to just innovate and really think out of the box. We started conducting assessments online for the first time because we felt that you needed to give an equal opportunity to a child who wasn't in Hyderabad and wanted admission. So at the academy, we are overwhelmed with the number of applications. And I just wanted to share, it's a 100-acre campus with only 740 students. Unlike a lot of other schools where you're looking at volume, His Highness has always said for leadership, quality is the most important thing. So you've got a staff, both teaching, non-teaching, about 150 odd people. So you can imagine what this campus is like. It's a place where there's significant interaction all the time. So when we moved online, one of the biggest USPs that we lost was people weren't coming to campus, nor were they seeing this environment that we had built. So we were one of the first movers to try and do a few very engaging, interesting online assessments, which we still continue to do. Now, when you're saying the future of assessments, the way we approach assessments is very different because we are trying to engage young people in a manner of a solution-driven approach. It's not just, okay, we do math, we do English, we do that so we know what the capability of the child is and how we can support that child when he or she comes to the academy. But beyond that, the biggest criteria that we focus on is problem solving and dynamic assessment. In my head, even with AI coming in, and I think AI will be a game changer even from an assessment perspective, I still think we are figuring it out. I don't think we're there as yet. And for a lot of people, a lot of schools that are advertising about AI and how much they've progressed, I mean, robots can't replace us. I don't think so.
Right. So you have assessed a lot of students
Yes.
from Meghalaya. You have maybe interacted with teachers, parents, and
Yes.
all. So what do you think? I mean, education in Meghalaya. Obviously, the reports, ASET reports, everyone talks about it. We are at the rock bottom.
Yes,
So what is
yes.
your take?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges for me is when we go district-wise, there are certain districts I feel that the abilities for math and science in particular are a challenge. Having said that, I think I've also seen certain districts this time because we're comparing from our last visit to this visit. And I think this time the results have been better from the kind of applications we've received, the kind of conversations we've had. But in certain districts, I think language is also a barrier. And that tells me that even if you're running a school where you're meant to be talking in English, maybe there are teachers that are more comfortable in local language. So the child is taking the learning in the local language. So if I walk in, he or she might know the answer, but I'm speaking in a language that's alien to the child. And you're right, I think one of the reasons that really pushed me to come here and the school to believe that we can work in Meghalaya was the results. And I'm very hopeful that it'll change. I think teachers have to become the game changer in this situation. Kids are as good as the teachers. I've always believed that. But my engagement this time, with the exception of maybe Tura, where I think there needs to be a stronger push to, and I know you were in Tura,
Yeah.
for math and science and even English, I think we're on a good path. because I'm committed to coming back again and again. So when I look back from 2022 to maybe 2030, I know that there'll be a change.
Great. So you take students in grade 6.
Grade 6.
So why is that? Why not before or why not after?
So grade 6 is the time we bring them because the residential program. We think that a child to move into a boarding facility or the residences as we call it, grade 6 is an ideal time, grade 6 and 7. What happens is the students, because you finish your school year in Meghalaya in December, we look at it that when they come in January, they get a time to adjust and to settle. So they come in January, and between January and May, they're really getting a feel of the place. They're settling in. We don't want them to go straight into grade 7 where you're expected to keep up with your academics, with your co-curriculars. So this time is almost like a time where they're allowed to make mistakes, they're allowed to ask 1,000 questions, and really settle in and settle down. So they spend the first 5 months as term 2 of grade 6 when they come in. And really the ball gets rolling in August where they join grade 7. Now these students receive a lot of support when they come because we support them with a team that believes in supporting them through English classes. So ESL, which is English as a second language. We have a very strong SEN department in our school, which is led by Mrs. Susan Long. And we run homework clubs, there's peer tutoring, and all of this is created to empower and support students without making them feel that you need additional support. It's really for them to just come up to speed with other children. So you're not mollycoddling them, nor are you sympathizing with them. And I think those are things you need to keep out of the classroom. So when these students come in, a lot of time is spent to build their confidence, to give them space to grow. Like I said earlier, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but when these students come in, they spend a year almost in these homework clubs and peer tutoring. The students from Meghalaya, 3 out of the 4, don't need additional support anymore. So they're attending class just as anybody else is in the school. And that speaks volumes because they've only been there for 2 years where everybody else has been there since grade 1. So these are small things that
So you do have grade 1 to 5 also, but that is not residential.
That's not residential because we feel those are very young, tender age for a child to be away from a family and to live by himself or herself. So grade 1 to 5 is the PYP, the primary years program, where the children are quite engaged and they do a lot of fun, interesting things as well. But grade 6, second term is when we bring these kids in. And we don't just bring kids in from Meghalaya. Meghalaya is our project in India. We have kids coming from Syria. And that's also fully funded by His Highness the Aga Khan through the Academy's project. So these kids come in. In the past, we've got kids who've come from Afghanistan, from Tajikistan. So all these conflict zones where you want educated people to go back tomorrow to maybe take on journalism, politics, be a public servant. So that's the vision. So we bring in kids from all of these places.
Great. So the 4 kids who are already there in this new batch. So what are what they will be entitled to? Like all those.
As part of the
I'm
scholarship?
sure because they will parents and everyone would want to know that like what all they will get out of that.
It's funny you ask that because often what gets said is you see the IB is expensive as I mentioned to you earlier.
Yeah.
You look at a good IB school and if you look at it from a grade 6 to grade 12, it's almost 1 crore.
That's
it's expensive.
They should know.
So yeah, absolutely, it's a fantastic opportunity.
Right.
I mean, so everything's included in this. I mean, we send the kids home 3 times a year. I mean, in the summer they spend 2 months. They come for Christmas. They'll come maybe during that Easter break. We pay for all the flights. We pay the taxi from Guwahati to Shillong. We are all inclusive, 100%. There are no hidden agendas here. The uniform is paid by us. We give them a laptop. Their exam fees are paid by us.
So essentially it covers everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. We take them to Decathlon to buy swimming trunks. I mean, if you name it, there's no stone unturned. They get pocket money.
Okay. Wow.
Because financial literacy is important. Once you get an education like this, you need to understand tomorrow you go to a great college, you get a good job. Financial literacy is never taught in schools, right? I mean, you figure it out around the way. And so that for me is again, how do you manage your pocket money? And I want to give you a small example. One of the kids the mother met the team recently. And the mum said, the pocket money that he's received, he's bought tiffin boxes for his younger siblings in Meghalaya.
Wow.
It speaks volumes of two value systems. One is the family, two is the school. Now, if they're both aligned in ensuring that the vision is to make you a good human being, we're so focused on results, right? If we can also work on creating an environment where you're allowing young people to be kind and generous and grateful, that's what this boy's done. So I'm not just going and buying a deodorant. I've saved pocket money, so I'm going to buy a pair of fancy sneakers. I'm buying tiffin boxes for my younger siblings. So that's also financial literacy. You're thinking about other people around you.
Okay. So this is class 6 beyond. It's a residential model.
Yes.
Right. So how is it more beneficial than a normal school, or let's say day boarding just for comparison?
Sure. So look, I'm a big fan of residential schools. I mean, prior to coming to the Aga Khan Academy, we spent 3 amazing years at Woodstock. Woodstock's a school established in 1854. It's a tried and tested model, and it teaches you so much. I think only when I worked at Woodstock did I realize that you have such an incredible opportunity. And I wish I had taken it up as a kid. When my parents said, you should go to boarding school, I thought it was a punishment. So as everyone thought it was a punishment. Going to boarding school is a bad thing. But I wish I had thought otherwise. So a residential program for me is very beneficial because both as staff and as mentors, we get to spend quality time after school with them. During school hours, what happens is all the children, of course, are treated equally. So you're in a class, you have your PE, you're in a science lab, you're doing your theater class. Great. At 3:15, the school buses are ready to go, so the day scholars head back home. But that's when the real fun starts, because once you've gone back to dorms, you've come back, you've changed, you're on the football field, you're in the swimming pool, you're on the squash court, you're playing tennis, you're playing basketball, you're rehearsing for a play, you're learning an instrument. There's no traffic, there's no travel, you're home. For me, the biggest advantage is you can go to the library and study if that's something that you need to do. So you're cutting out so much time that gets wasted, and you're utilizing time that can really benefit you to doing things you want to do. So for me, a residential school is really a fantastic option for people. If you can, A, afford it, and B, give into it, because a lot of parents get very sentimental. I think you have to understand that the way the holidays work nowadays in school, you'll see your kids for at least 2.5 months, regardless of sending them to boarding school. So I'm a big believer in boarding school and residential programs.
Great. So lastly,
Yes.
a message for all the parents, teachers, students who are listening to this, and maybe next year they will be trying for Aga Khan.
Yes. So I need to look here.
Yeah.
Okay. So my message to all the parents, all the teachers, all the students is you have to start dreaming. You have to start believing. And if you're not doing that, then coming to the assessments might be a futile attempt. Today, for instance, I spent time, almost 6 hours, with 6 students who come from the most challenging backgrounds. They've come from hours and hours away to Shillong for this interview. If you met them on a bus, if you met them walking down the streets of Shillong, you wouldn't believe that they have qualified to come to our school. You would not believe that they're worthy of a 1 crore scholarship. So don't question yourself, don't question your dreams. Start working hard today, because we'll be back next year. And who knows, next year you might be sitting next to both of us having a conversation about this opportunity. So all the very best, and I hope to see you next year.
Thank you. That was enlightening.
Thank you so much.
For those who are listening, I'm sure you have learned a lot about this, and next year we will see much more participation when the assessments start for Aga Khan. Thank you so much, Kuble Shabun, Mithila.